Welcome back to another bold prediction episode. Today, we're talking about a very interesting bold prediction that I got from one of y'all, one of the viewers. A non-traditional blue blood will win the national championship. It's very interesting, right? Because non-traditional blue blood, I think there's going to be a lot of debate about who's a blue blood, who's not. So I did my best to kind of shrink down the list a little bit and make it represent more of what I believe the question is meaning, right? So if you've won a national championship in the last couple of years, you're probably going to be considered a blue blood on my list. So I think it's more so talking about kind of an outlandish team that hasn't won a national championship in a long time, or a program that has struggled really badly over the last decade or so, actually breaking through and winning a championship. So to provide context on it, let's take a look at the national title odds and kind of go through it that way to kind of determine how outlandish is this? Is it realistic? Is it not? I don't know. We're going to find out. So the blue blood contenders on the list, if you kind of look at the top teams in the country and kind of where they fall, Alabama is the number one title odds. You got Ohio State, you got Georgia, you got Clemson. So very normal. I think that's pretty much what anyone would expect to be the top four teams as far as title odds go. All four of those teams are on my blue blood contender list. I know Clemson can be debatable, I'm sure, but I have them in it. Then you get to number 5, and that's where things start to get a little interesting. USC is a blue blood, but they are breaking in a new coach. They're at 5, so I kept them in the blue blood contenders, even though I think some might debate it a little bit. A&M at 6, though, first non-blue blood. They're the first ones on the board with a quote-unquote realistic shot to win the national championship. Then you move on, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Michigan, all those blue bloods before you hit Utah at 10. So that gives us 2 options inside the top 10 to actually win the national championship as a non-blue blood. Let's dig a little deeper. You got Texas at 11, they're a blue blood. And then you got Oregon, Miami, Wisconsin, Oklahoma State. That group right there, that 12, 13, 14, 15. Some might argue that Oregon and Miami could be blue bloods, but that group right there is, I think, where the focus needs to be. Oklahoma State, pretty good odds. Wisconsin, very soft division, but they're going to have to get through Ohio State twice in order to make the college football playoff. That's a tough ask. Miami, Oregon, again, question marks, but maybe. Possibility. The teams after them, LSU, Florida, Tennessee, Michigan State, Penn State. I put Penn State, Florida, and LSU in the blue blood category. Tennessee and Michigan State are out. So that kind of shrinks the list a little bit, right? You're kind of now looking through and you're going, okay, so there's a few realistic options in there. I would say that I would probably add schools like Arkansas and Baylor to that list, as well as potential CFP national championship winners based on the conference they play in and also their schedules to a point. So now you got to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit, because not only is this question making the college football playoff, it's about winning it. So that means you can't just get there as the 4th seed and then this checks out. You have to be able to beat probably Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State, most likely, in that first round game. All the schools that aren't inside that top 4, I don't think can beat Alabama this year in the college football playoff. I don't see it, which makes this a very bold prediction in my eyes, because even if you make it, you're talking about an Alabama team that I think is going to be historically good, or you're going to have to play an Ohio State team that, if they're the 1 seed, they're going to be historically good as well. So that's where you kind of lose me. If you look through kind of the teams that I think have the best chance at potentially doing that, I think my best odds would be Utah, for the reasons of they have a very good offensive line, very good run game. Cam Rising is a very good quarterback. And if you have a really good quarterback that shows up at the biggest moment with an offensive line that can actually protect them, might be able to put up points, might be able to actually score with an Alabama or an Ohio State like they did in the Rose Bowl a year ago. Baylor, next on that list. Reason for it: talent on the offensive line and defensive line. They are loaded on both sides, top 5 in the country in both, which allows them to protect their quarterback, run the football, play good enough defense, and stay in games. If their quarterback, Blake Shapen, actually hits and emerges as the quarterback that he was in the Big 12 championship, they would have a realistic possibility of winning a college football playoff game if they can actually get there. Oklahoma State fits the bill, good defense, a quarterback that if he takes that next step, maybe, but I think he's probably too turnover prone. So they're a little bit lower on the list. Then you have the two SEC West schools, and they're on here because they can go 11-1 and still make the college football playoff, and that's Texas A&M and Arkansas. A&M, the talent. They have all kinds of talent. If a quarterback emerges and is actually one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the SEC, I could see them going 11-1 and therefore making it to the college football playoff and potentially getting a rematch with an Alabama, which is possible they could win. They won last year with Zach Calzada at quarterback. And then Arkansas, I mentioned them, great offensive line. They're going to be able to run the ball on almost anyone. And I trust Sam Pittman to get them ready on both sides of the ball up front. So they're an interesting one. I don't think that they're going to actually go 11-1, but if they got there, I think they could have an opportunity to win a college football playoff game. The others, not high enough on. Miami, NC State, tough asks. I just don't think the depth of their roster is good enough to where they could go in and win a college football playoff game. NC State, I would give a better shot than Miami just because of what they have up front. And then Tennessee with a Hendon Hooker just because he's a wild card, right? He's a wild card quarterback that could go into a game and just happen to throw for 1,000,000 yards and actually lead his team to a victory. I don't see it, though. They're not physical enough on the defensive side. So, again, I don't see this happening. I think it's pretty unrealistic, but looking at it all, kind of going over it, I do think the 4th team will be a team that's a non-blue blood, whether it's a Utah, Baylor, and Oklahoma State. I think they'll be the 4th seed, and therefore they'll have an opportunity, but I don't think they'll be able to get it done against an Alabama, an Ohio State, or a Georgia. Not this time around, at least. I don't think they're quite deep enough yet. So that's it for that bold prediction. A really good one. Really excited to talk about that one. That was a really long thought process to kind of go through which teams I think could actually compete on that level. I'll be back later next week to talk about more bold predictions as we get closer and closer to the 2022 football season. So thanks for joining.